Hi friends, today we are going to talk about scalability. We'll be understanding what scalability is from application perspective and what are the things that can contribute to making your application scalable and what are the anti-patterns which will prevent you from making your application scale. So when we say scalability, what does it actually mean? It means that when your application grows, it is able to grow in a better way. When the traffic on your application grows, it is your application that can handle the traffic in a very good way. So how do we actually scale our application? So what are the different ways in which we can scale our application? Very basic way in which we host applications during the early stages of development is we take a server and put our application on in it, and we take a domain name. We point that domain to the IP address of our server. So this is a server. We point the domain to the IP address of the server, and then we give this domain name to the website, or we point our website to this domain name, and then we can either open this website in the browser, or we can open this in our application, mobile application, via Android app or via browser only. So this is how it happens. But what if your application starts to grow? The users who are accessing the application starts to grow. What are the different challenges that you will face in this architecture? First of all, only a single instance of your service is running. So if, God forbid, this node goes down, then your application is not going to be available to your users, and it is going to impact your user base and user satisfaction. So what you can do is, what comes to my mind is, you can take another server and point the domain name to this server also. So if one server goes down, there's another server which can handle the traffic, but this is not the case. So for example, when we say that domain name is pointed to IP1 and IP2, what will happen if service running on IP1 is not available? Domain will continue to point to your IP1 server. So it is going to point to your IP1 server, and whenever anyone is resolving your domain name, it is going to give IP1 as well as IP2. Sometimes it is going to give IP1, sometimes it is going to give IP2. So whenever the domain resolves to IP1, it is going to give you 5xx, or the latencies are going to be high for your users, and it is going to lead to bad user reputation for your website. And if by chance the request goes to IP2, then it is going to bug. So what is going to happen is, when you load your website in a browser, there are multiple calls for images, for different APIs, for static assets like CSS and JS. So some components are going to hit on IP1, and some components are going to hit on IP2 totally randomly. And the components which were hitting on IP1 won't be loaded on your website, and the components which were accessed via IP2 were behind the domain, then they are going to be accessed. So your website is going to be partially loaded. So to mitigate this scenario, what happens is, major cloud providers provide ELBs, or load balancers, LB. What happens is, you can just point a domain to the load balancer. This is the domain. You can just point a domain to the load balancer, and when the browser accesses that domain, it is going to give IP address of this load balancers. So this is going to have multiple IP address. At least 2 IP addresses are going to be present for your domain. So let's say P1 and P2. And behind this load balancer, you are going to attach your instances, instance I1 and instance I2. And now what you're going to do is, you are going to send the traffic to the load balancer, and it is going to land at one of the public IP addresses, either P1 or P2. and then this request is going to be routed to instance I1 and I2 in a round robin fashion. So one request is going to land on I1 and another request is going to land on I2. How this load balancer is different from the from putting IP addresses behind the domain is, for example, let's say this instance goes down, so this instance won't be available. But with respect to domain names, load balancer provide a functionality where they are going to health check or going to access this instance I1 time to time via some health check or status check. It can be particular API. Let's say this instance I1 or service exposes health API /HAALT. It can be any name. You just have to configure that API in the load balancer, and it is going to periodically hit your instances, both instances, on that health API. If it is going to give 200, then all is okay. It is going to send the traffic to instance I1. For example, this instance goes down, then health API is going to give 500, or it is not going to get any response from the instance I1. So what it is going to do is, after a particular amount of health checks, it is not going to send the request to this server. Okay, so request won't be sent to this server. All the requests will be routed to instance I1 and I2, sorry, and the requests are going to be served in a very good fashion, in a stable manner. Then we can imagine that since it has public IP addresses, there are going to be some servers running inside the ELP which are actually routing the traffic to instance I1 and I2. What happens if any of these instances goes down? This is basically responsibility of the cloud provider to maintain high availability of the instances inside the load balancer. I mean internal load balancer instances. If any node goes down, they have capable systems which can add another instances and remove those unhealthy instances from the load balancer itself. So this is one way we can make our application scalable. So we have already seen this. Let's see what happens. What another scenario we can face is the amount of users on our website increases. What is going to happen is it is going to lead to higher CPU utilization on the existing instances, and they are going to choke. So another pattern that we use is auto scaling to make our scaling efficient. What auto scaling does is it collects metrics of resource utilization on the existing servers, and if resource utilization on the existing servers increase a particular threshold, auto scaling automatically adds the instances behind the ELP. Major cloud providers provide auto scaling functionality so that you can scale your application, scale up or scale down your application as per your requirement. And when the traffic on your instances goes down, so automatically the CPU utilization on these instances also going to go down. Auto scaling, you can configure auto scale down also. So when CPU utilization or resource utilization on your servers decreases below a certain threshold, then it can automatically remove some instances so that optimal CPU or resource utilization is maintained in your service. So this is another way of having a good scalable application. Sometimes we write code which has high coupling to a single instance. For example, let's say we have seen that we can have multiple instances. What if we write an application which has database running on the server itself? There, in the initial stages, there can be scenarios in which application was having database on the same instance, so we won't be able to scale this application, because if we add another instance, it is going to have a single database. It is going to have a database on the app servers itself, and we won't be able to scale our applications in a good manner. So in this scenario, what we do is we separate out these instances. So that the resource or the application which is choking in terms of resource availability can be scaled appropriately, and if DB was not getting choked, we can have single database instance which can serve the traffic, which can continue serving the traffic. So this is also one of the cases in which we have to keep our components separately so that they can be scaled in a better way. Now let's move on to another part. Let's say your application is performing well. You have 3 instances running, 1, 2, 3. You also have ELP, which is or load balancer. Elastic Load Balancer is basically a AWS proprietary tool or proprietary component. It is working fine, but you have a single database. And there are some read operations and many write operations. For example, there are 1% of writes, and 99% of the queries on the database are read queries. So if you get to know a scenario in which your database is a single point of failure, you are able to increase the traffic, increase the number of application instances using autoscaling group, but database is going to be a single point of failure, SPOF. It is a single point of failure. If database instance goes down, you won't be able to keep serving, you won't be able to serve the traffic. So what you can do is, in this scenario, if you want to scale your application, so what we can do is, instead of having a single database, we can create a read replica. It is called a slave server. It will read from your main database. It will keep reading from your main database. And in your applications, you can ensure that you are only sending write queries to your main database, and for read queries, you are sending those queries to your slave database. So this way you can have multiple slave databases, and your read traffic for the queries can be scaled horizontally. So since there is no write happening on the slaves directly, all the writes are happening on the main database only. You can have multiple slave databases, and your reads will keep getting scaled as and when you require their scaling. So this is one of the pattern also, that is reading from slave database. Another pattern in this scenario can also be, rather than having a single read and write database, there are multiple databases which provide horizontal scaling. For example, MySQL cannot be horizontally scaled in normal circumstances. But there are other databases like Cassandra. For example, you can keep 3 Cassandra boxes, and you can basically connect them in a cluster, and you can query any of the 3 databases, and they are going to give you consistent result, or eventually consistent results. In this way, your writes as well as read have been scaled. If you notice that your application is having higher CPU load, then you can have auto scaling. And if you notice that your databases are having higher CPU load, then what you can do is you can add another instance in a Cassandra cluster or a horizontally scalable database cluster, and it is going to start serving more traffic from that cluster, or it is going to reduce the resource utilization on existing database instances. So you can use distributed database. Another pattern for scalability is caching. So you have an application, you have your load balancers, you are getting large number of queries, large number of requests on a load balancer, and you are basically scaling aggressively. You are scaling your application servers aggressively, and you have your database, and most of the queries are read queries. So most of the queries are read queries, and you notice that frequently used only a few of the rows. For example, let's say 95% of the reads are repeated. That means that most of the users are accessing the same content, or most of the API calls are reading same content from your database. Okay, how are you going to improve your application or your system architecture in this scenario? What we are going to do is we are going to add a caching system, which is going to save the frequently used queries result in the caching system. Database stores this data on the disk, and caching system can use a faster storage like memory or SSDs or anything, any faster storage than disk. So it is going to, and when the request comes, it is going to first check in the caching database or caching service. If the requested data is present in the caching service, then it is going to respond affirmatively. And if it is not present, then it is accessed from the database and then stored in the caching service. So when the next time request comes for that piece of information, it can be accessed from the caching service. Now, what advantage it provides is, since we are accessing huge amount of data from the database, we can be accessing huge amount of data, and it takes time to run queries on the database. It can be complicated query, but in caching database, you can have just key value pairs, key and value pairs. For example, for ID this, you are storing its relevant information. For ID this, you are storing the relevant information. And if this retrieval was trivial, then we can reduce our load on the database, because less number of queries will now be going to the database. Many of the query, or 95% of the reads, if you have sufficiently large caching system, then most of the queries can be served from the caching system, and the read utilization or the resource utilization on a database can be increased. So you don't have to scale the size of your database. You just have to scale your cache appropriately, but we have to keep in mind that we cannot keep increasing the caching servers indefinitely. We have to create an optimal architecture so that the costing of the architecture is also costing of your system is also maintained, because caching servers or memory intensive servers, you need to store that data in memory. So memory intensive servers can be costlier than disk. So you have to make an intelligent decision of where to use caching and how to use that caching. Another way of scaling our application is dividing our application into multiple servers. So let's say we have a single service which is doing everything, and if any change has to go, it has to go in a single repository of code, single place of code. And since the size of your repository keeps growing, the testing efforts or efforts to keep your application stable also increases. So what you can do is you can basically break down your application into multiple services or multiple components, and each of these components can be maintained independently. So for example, let's say there was a service which was doing some functionality X and some functionality Y, and if they were independent, what we can do is we can make this service, or we can break this service in two components, X and Y. We can have separate teams maintaining it, and if not even separate teams, a single team can maintain multiple microservices. So this is how we basically divide your service into multiple sub-services or microservices. So each and every microservice has single responsibility, and it can be handled better. So for example, if earlier we had to send any change in component Y, we had to redeploy component X as well, and there can be possibility that changes in component Y would have affected adversely component X. So when we break this application into multiple microservices, we can ensure that the changes in component Y are not affecting component X if there is no interaction between these two services. Okay. Also, the development effort is going to reduce, because you have, since you have broken down your service into smaller parts, it is easier to test, it is easier to maintain, and the code changes are also easier to review. Another way of making our systems scalable is understanding how the system works. So first of all, let's assume that there is a system which is creating orders. So this is the system which is creating orders, and besides creating orders, it is also sending SMS notification for those orders, and it is also sending email notifications for those orders. And for SMS notifications, you are calling the SMS API, SMS or Twilio API. It is a company which focuses on sending SMS or notifications. And then for sending email notification, you call SendGrid API. SendGrid is a company which focuses on sending email notifications for email. Now, these are totally independent things. Order creation should not be impacted if SMS is not being sent, or order creation should not be dependent on when email notification is down. So let's say after some time you get another requirement to add push notifications or Android push notification to your service. What we are going to do is, you will think that since SMS notifications are going from here, we can also write a code in the same application to send push notifications or mobile push notification, Android push notifications. But this architecture is not scalable because it is creating bottlenecks. For example, let's say there's another requirement of informing fraud detection team that if any order is created, they should be informed that an order has been created so that they can run their systems to identify whether that order was fraud or not. Let's say if it was placed using a fraud or stolen credit card, then it should be that order should be cancelled if it was not being done. So this is the requirement. Then we are basically choking our application with features. Our focus in this application was orders, but we had created a system which was highly dependent on other systems as well. And it is going to impact order creation, which we don't want. So what we do is, we break these systems down, as we have earlier seen that. What we do is, we create an order system, and then we create another, let's say, notification system. And let's say we create a fraud system. We are going to see an unoptimal way of doing it, and then we are going to see an optimal way of doing it. So rather than sending the SMS from here, what we are going to do is, after order creation, we are going to call notification API and fraud API. Earlier, the fraud detection work was being done in this service only. We have created a separate service, and then we are going to call these two APIs, and these two APIs are going to call SMS API and email API. This is one of the cases that we can do. But we can do better also. Here we have reduced the scope of work for this service. We can make this a system scalable by using another pattern called messaging pattern for scalability. So once the order is created, what we can do is, we create a queue, and we can push this order in this queue. Okay. And whichever service wants to do any action or take any action on any order, it can read this queue. So queue is basically a database where we can save some data, and the consumers who want to take any action or do any processing on those events can read from there and take their respective action. So the notification team can read from this queue and can send the SMS as well as email. And the fraud team can also read this queue and take appropriate action or fraud detection on those orders. In the earlier scenario, we were integrating their APIs. So for example, slash notify API was integrated and slash fraud check was integrated. And let's say there was another requirement for, say, service X wants to do something on the order creation, then we would have created a system that we will be making changes in the order system or in the main system to integrate with service X. But in the new scenario, we see that we have just created a queue and our responsibility is only to send orders or the events to those queues. These are basically events to those queue, that queue. And if any service wants to take any action on that queue, what we can do is they just have to read from this queue for the events that are incoming, and it can basically take any action. So there is no integration or code change on the main system. All the downstream systems, these are called downstream systems because this is the main system, and these are downstream systems which take action on the events created by this system. So they just have to take action on the events which are created by this system, and there is a loose coupling. There's a loose coupling between these two components. So if any system wants to scale, all they have to do is they have to scale. If we want to scale our notification system, so if we want to send an Android push notification also, it can integrate here. And if the push notifications are larger quantity, we just have to scale this subsystem. We just have to scale this subsystem, and if we have to make changes in the fraud system, we just have to make changes in the fraud system. The main system is not impacted. So this is another way of making a system scalable and stable as well as stable. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you and have a nice day.